So welcome everybody to this latest video on 162 Maths, and in this video we'll be going over the AQA GCSE Maths paper of June 2023, Higher Paper 2, which is a calculator paper. Now before we get started working through the paper, a little reminder that I'll include a link to the paper in the description below along with the question breakdown so you can see which question refers to which topic, which will be useful if you get stuck on any questions, and also include a link to the 162 Maths contents page which gives you easy access to all the lessons that cover all the topics in GCSE Maths along with topic tests, audits and other exam paper walkthroughs. So let's get started on question 1. So question 1 reads, write 30 to 12 in the form of n to 1. So what we're wanting is the second digit to equal 1. So to get the second digit equal to 1, what I need to do is I need to divide both numbers by the number on the right. So here I'm divided by 12, so here it's going to be 30 divided by 12, which is 2.5. Then for question 2, it says 4 consecutive triangle numbers are 6, 10, 15 and 21. Write down the next triangle number. So here we can see we're increasing by plus 4, then it's plus 5, then it's plus 6. So the next one is going to be plus 7. 21 plus 7 is 28. Then moving on to question 3, it says write down the reciprocal of 4 over 7. So on the calculator, all I need to do is 1 over 4 over 7. Now just make sure you are doing this correctly. So you are using the fraction button, writing 1, and then pressing the fraction button again, 4 over 7. And what you should find, when you're doing the reciprocal of a fraction, it just flips it. So it's going to be 7 over 4. Then for question 4, it says the price of a toy increases by 12.5% to £19.53. Work out the original price of the toy. So if we reverse percentages, well, if we're increasing by 12.5%, the decimal multiplier is going to be 1.25. And because we're doing reverse percentages, we need to divide the amount by that decimal multiplier. So it's going to be 19.53 divided by 1.125, which gives me an answer of £17.36. Moving on to question 5, it says Jess saves 2p, 5p and 10p coins. She has 45 10p coins, 8 times as many 2p coins as 10p coins, and she has £17.70 in total. Work out the ratio of the total value of 2p coins to the total value of 5p coins. Give your answer in its simplest form. So looking at 10p coins first, in terms of the total amount, we've got 45 times 10. So it's going to be 45 multiplied by 0.1, and that gives me an answer of £4.50. Then for the 2p coins, it says that we've got 8 times as many 2p coins as 10p coins. So if we multiply that by 8, then I'm going to get an answer of, let's just quickly do 45 times 8, and that's 360. So that's going to be 360 multiplied by 0.02, and that comes up to £7.20. So then the amount that's left is going to be £17.70 minus £7.20 minus £4.50, which comes up to a total of £6. And this is the total value of the 5p coins. So then all I then need to do is write those two amounts as a ratio. So that's £7.20 to £6. And again, I'm going to convert it into pence because we don't like decimals in ratios. And then all that's left for me to then do is simplify this ratio, which I can either use the fraction button on the calculator, but ultimately it's going to be 72 to 60. You can then go on to simplify any which way you want, but it should simplify to give you 6 to 5. Moving on to question 6, it says part of a regular polygon is shown. Assume that the polygon is an octagon. Work out the size of the exterior angle. Well, an octagon has got 8 sides, and the formula for an external angle, exterior angle I should say, is 360 divided by the total number of sides. So for this I'm going to do 360 divided by 8, which gives me an answer of 45 degrees. It then says, in fact, the polygon has more sides than an octagon. What does this mean about the size of the exterior angle when you tick one box? Well, if we're having more sides, that means our denominator is going to be bigger, so therefore we're going to end up with a smaller answer, so the box we need to tick is going to be our third option. Moving on to question 7, it says, in a game an ordinary fair 6-sided dice is rolled and the fair spinner is shown is spun. The score is the dice number substituted into the spinner expression. Complete the table and show all the possible scores. So all we need to do is just substitute the numbers on our top row by the expressions in our column. So this is going to be 2, 4, 6, 10 and 12. Then we're multiplying by 3, so that's going to be 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. And then we're squaring the numbers, so that's going to be 1, 4, 9, 16 and 36. Then moving on to 7b, it says the player wins the game if their score is 10 or more. Work out the probability that they win the game. So going back to our potential scores, what I'm going to do is just highlight all the numbers that are 10 or more. And we can see we've got 8 opportunities of winning out of 18. So it's going to be 8 over 18, which simplifies to give me an answer of 4 over 9. And again, with it being probabilities, no expectation for you to simplify your fractions. I certainly would. But again, for 1 mark, any of those 2 answers would be fine. Then moving on to 7c, it says the game is played 711 times. Estimate the number of games that are won. Well, to do this is relative frequency. So we multiply the probability of them winning multiplied by the number of trials. And if I type that into my calculator, I get an answer of 316. For question 8, it says work out the values of a and b. So here we're comparing coefficients. So let me just zoom in so you can see it a little bit clearer on the screen. So here what we're going to do is we're going to expand the left hand side. So here I'm going to end up with ax squared minus 3x squared plus 2b equals 5x squared plus 12. Now for this, what we need to do is compare the coefficients. So looking at the x squareds, I've got a minus 3 and I've got 5. So a minus 3 equals 5. So then a is going to equal 8. And then comparing the constants, well, 2b is going to equal to 12. So therefore b is going to equal 6. Moving on to question 9, it says A has a coordinate of 1, 3, B has a coordinate of 2, 9, are points on a centimetre grid. And it says ABCD is a parallelogram, AD and BC are horizontal and each has a height of 5 centimetres. The diagonals of ABCD cross at E. Work out the 2 possible pairs of the coordinates for E. So if I just zoom out so we can see the grid there. Now for this, what we need to do first is we know that it's got a height of 5. So for this, what we then need to do, or length of 5 I should say. So from this, what we then need to do is work out where the corresponding points are going to be. So here, D could either be 5 horizontally from A, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is one point that D could be. So I'll just call that D1. And for C, that's going to either be there. So the diagonal for each of these, if C and D are at that point, is going to be at 4, 6. So 4, so that's where the diagonal is going to be. So that's where E1 is going to be. However, if D was on the other side, so we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and let's call that D2, and therefore B is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here, and that's going to be, call that C2. Then the E point for C2 and D2 is going to be at minus 1, 6. So that's where E2 is going to be, and it's these 2 coordinates that we need to quote for the answer. So the possible answer is going to be minus 1, 6 or 4, 6. And again, you can write those coordinates in any particular order, but I certainly would mark the points on the axes as a form of working out. Moving on to question 10, it says write down the translation vector that maps A onto B. So we're going from A to b, and its translation. So for this we need to pick a point. I'm going to pick this top corner here, and we're going to go up to this point here. So going horizontally first, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going 3 down, so it's going to be 4 minus 3. Moving on to question 11, it says the volume of a sphere is given as a formula of 4/3 pi r cubed. It says a bowl has a hemisphere with a radius of 12 centimeters. Water is poured into the bowl at a rate of 325 cubic centimeters per second for 8 seconds. Does the water fill more than 70% of the bowl? So for this, what we need to do first is work out the volume of the bowl. Now we know it's a hemisphere, so what we need to do is we need to then divide this formula by 2. So if I first of all do 4/3 times pi times 12 cubed, work that out, in which I get an answer of, and I work with pi, so 2304 pi. We're going to divide that by 2, in which I get an answer of 3619.114737, or 1152 pi. Then what we then need to do is work out the water amount. So we're going to use this information here, so that's going to be 325 multiplied by 8, and again straight into the calculator. That gives me 2,600. So then what we then need to do is work out the percentage, which is going to be the water divided by the amount. Now I'm going to go for, I could either go for the decimal version or you give the pi version. I'm going to multiply that by 100 and typing that all into my calculator, I get an answer of 71.8 blah 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 percent. So the question's asking, does the water fill more than 70% of the bowl? We can say yes it does, as 71.8% is greater than 70%. Oh, I know what's happened there. And there we go. Moving on to question 12, it says show that these two rectangles are similar. So for this, what we need to do is compare the scale factors for two corresponding sides, and if they're the same, then it's a fair assumption that it's going to be similar, particularly if it's a rectangle, as we've already got two sets of sides. So here, if I then work out what 5/8 is, which is 0.625, I then do 12 divided by 19.2. That also gives me 0.625. So as you can see, these two amounts here are the same, so therefore they are going to be similar. Moving on to question 13, it says that a factory packs X boxes of tea bags per hour. Each box contains 80 tea bags. Show that the factory packs 4x/3 tea bags per minute. Well, for this, we know that there's going to be 80 times X, and we want to work it out per minute, so I divide that by 60. So all I need to do is simplify this expression. So I take off divide by 10, and I can divide by 2, which ultimately leaves me with 4x/3, which is exactly what they wanted me to show. Moving on to question 14, it says that a company has 123 employees. Information about their hourly rates of pay is shown in the table. The owner of the company uses the data to make two statements, and we've got statement A: over 30% of the employees have an hourly rate that is more than £17, and the statement B is that the average hourly rate of pay is more than £20. And it says show working to support statement A. So for this, what we need to do for statement A is we first of all need to work out how many employees are earning more than £17. So ones that are earning more than £17, you could say are going to be half of this group. So that's going to be 16. Then we've got 15 plus 10. So if I then do 16 plus 15 plus 10, which gives me an answer of 41. And then what I then need to do is work out the percentage. So it's going to be 41 over a total of 123 employees. Multiply that by 100 because we want it as a percentage. And that comes up to 33.3%. And as you can see, which is greater than 30%. Moving on to B, it says, why might statement A not be true? And again, the reason for this is because we have assumed that half of the 14 to 20 group earn over £17. And again, it might be skewed towards closer to the 14, it might be skewed more to the 20, which will affect our answer in part A. It then says for 14C, work out estimate of the mean to support statement B. So for this, what we need to do is go back to the table. I probably need to rub this out. And to work out the mean of group data, what I need is a midpoint and I need an FX column. So the midpoint of these, and again, if you're struggling with the midpoint, just add the bounds together, divide by 2. So that's going to be 12, 17, 30, and 70. And then the FX is where I'm just multiplying the frequency by the midpoint and working out what that is going to be. So on the calculator, that's going to give me an answer of 792, 544, 450, and 700. And all that's left for me to then do is add up the total frequencies, 2486. So for C, the estimated mean is going to be the total FX, 2486, divided by the total frequency, which is 123. And that comes up to a total on the calculator as, and again, because we're dealing with money, we need to round to 2 decimal places, as £20 and 21 pence. It then says, why is the mean not the best average to represent the data? And again, there's several reasons we could get for the 1 mark. So we could say that the data is skewed. And what do I mean by that? Well, I mean that fact that when the frequency is pretty much the same for each of the columns, then the mean might be a good way of using that as an average. But as you can see, we've got a lot more employees on a lower wage than a higher wage, so therefore it is using the mean will affect the average that we use, so it's not the best one. You could also say that more earn less than the average, or than the mean that we've calculated. You could also say not equal groups widths are used. You could also say the midpoints have used, real and raw data is not used, and we've only calculated an estimated mean. So something along those lines would be absolutely fine. You don't need to go into great detail by giving more than one explanation, so just be confident in the answer that you give and go for that. Then moving on to question 15, it says expand x squared minus 9xy multiplied by 2x plus 5y. So for this, depending on how you expand your brackets, you may want to use loops, you may want to use tables. Let's just see what we get, but you definitely want to show you're working out. So here we end up with 2x cubed. Then we're going to end up with plus 5x squared y. Then we're going to end up with minus 18x squared y and minus 45xy squared. And the only 2 terms we can simplify are going to be the middle 2. So our final answer is going to look at 2x squared, and it's going to be minus 13x squared y minus 45x squared xy squared. Moving on to question 16, it says line A has an equation of y equals ax minus 1, passes through the point 7, 13. Line B has an equation of 5x minus 3x equals 4. Show that the line A has a greater gradient than line B. So for this, what we need to do is use this bit of information here to work out what the equation for line A is going to be. So if I just write line A, so here I've got y equals ax minus 1, and we've got the coordinate of 7, 13. So this is my x value, this is my y value. So substituting those in, I get 13 equals 7a minus 1, and then I get 14 equals 7a, so a equals 2. So then the equation for a is going to be y equals 2x minus 1. Then for line B, what I then need to do is do a bit of rearranging. So here I've got 5y minus 3x equals 4. Now to work out the gradient, I need to make y the subject. So I've got 5y equals 3x plus 4. So then y equal, then dividing by 5, I get 3 over 5x plus 4. And so all I then need to do is then compare the gradients. So here you can see that the gradient of A is 2, the gradient of B is 3/5. So the answer then is line A. So as you can, well, it's actually proving it. So there we just need to say that 2 is greater than 3 over 5. Moving on to question 17, we've got a triangle and the question is asking us to work out the size of angle X. So to work this out first, what I need to do is I need to find one of the remaining, either AC or BC, to work out what X is. So using this triangle here, and if I draw it out separately, it might make a little bit of sense as to what I'm doing. So what I need to do is I need to work out the length of this side here, and I'm just going to call that Y because we're already using X. So if I take that triangle out and just maybe reflect it so it's a little bit easier. So 37 is here, this side is my Y, and the hypotenuse is 4. So then using this, if I label using SOHCAHTOA tricks, it's a right angle triangle, this is going to be H, this is going to be A, so I'm going to be using cos, so cos 37 equals A, or Y should I say, over 4. So therefore Y equals 4 cos 37. Now I could work that out, in which it would give me an answer, and just type it into my calculator now, and it gives me an answer of 3.1945 and then centimeters. Now because that is not my final answer and I'm going to use that answer, I need to be as accurate as possible. So what I'm going to do is, rather than using Y, I'm now going to use, instead of the exact value, which is 4 cos 37. Now again, you could use a rounded answer, you could use 3.19, you could use 3.2, but again I don't want to lose any marks in terms of accuracy of my final answer. So this is what I'm trying to work out. This length here is 4 cos 37 and this top length is 9.3. So using this, labeling the triangle, I've got this as the opposite, this is the hypotenuse, so now I'm going to be using sine. So sine x equals the opposite, which is 4 cos 37 over 9.3, or as I said, you could use 3.1945 depending on whatever you rounded that up to, divided by 9.3. So x is going to equal the inverse sine of the answer of that fraction, in which I get an answer of 20.9090 and then blah blah blah. So therefore, to one decimal place, I'm going to go for 20.1, and that's to 1 dp. Moving on to question 18, it says rearrange, and we've got y equals x plus 8 over x. So if I just write down the expression first. So the first thing we need to do is get rid of the fraction, so I take the x over to the other side, so I've got xy equals x plus 8. Now because we want to make x a subject, we want x is all on one side, everything else on the other. So I've got xy minus x equals 8. Then I factorise this, so I've got y minus 1 equals 8, and I'm going to take the bracket over to the other side, leaving me with 8 over y minus 1. Now moving on to question 19, it says here are the first 4 terms of a quadratic sequence, and the question is asking us to work out the expression for the nth term of the sequence. So first things first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down the numbers and then work out the difference. So here we've got a difference of 17, difference of 27 and a difference of 37, and then our double difference is going to be 10. So with our double difference being 10, that means 5n squared is going to be in the formula. So then setting up a table, I've got n, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I've got my sequence numbers, which are 3, 20, 47 and 84. Now I know 5n squared's in there, so I'll write 5n squared. So substituting is 1 squared is 1, times 5 is 5, 2 squared is 4, times 5 is 20, 3 squared is 9, times 5 is 45, 4 squared is 16, times 5 is 80. So then what I then want to do is I then want to work out the difference. Now the nth term is going to be 5n squared plus or minus the difference. So from this, what I then want to do is work out the difference to get from 5n squared to this. So here that's going to be minus 2, here it's going to be 0, here it's going to be plus 2, and here it's going to be plus 4. So the difference has got a sequence of minus 2, 0, 2, and 4. So what I now want to do is work out the nth term of the difference. So here you can see that it's going up in 2's. So I've got 2n. And then what do I need to get from 2 to minus 2, which is take away 4. So therefore the difference has got an nth term of 2n minus 4. So all that's left for me to then do is substitute it into this here. So the nth term of the quadratic sequence is going to be 5n squared plus 2n minus 4. Moving on to question 20. A, it says PQR are points on a circle. S is a point inside the triangle PQR. Assume that S is at the centre. Work out the size of angle X. So here, if S is the centre, then we've got arrowhead, which therefore means that X is half the size of the angle at the centre. So it's going to be 130 divided by 2, which gives me an answer of 65 degrees. It then says, in fact, that the centre of the circle is on PS, is not at S. What does this mean about the size of angle X? And therefore, if it's not at S, the centre of that circle, so therefore it's going to be greater than our answer in part A. It then says for a different circle, AB is a tangent at A, C and D are on the circumference of the circle, and AC equals CD. And the question is asking us that here is Simon's method to work out the size of angle Y, and we've got this here. Is he correct? So let's have a look if he is correct. So let me just get this all on one screen if I can. I think let me just adjust it slightly. There we go. So in terms of this, let's have a look at what we've got. So we know that ACD is equal to 70 degrees, and the reason for that is because the alternate segment theorem. So therefore that Y is going to be 180 because it's so the alternate segment theorem therefore means that this is going to be 70 and this is also going to be Y because ACD is a isosceles triangle. So triangle ACD is isosceles as AC equals CD. So Y equals 180 minus 70 divided by 2, and if we work that out, that gives us an answer of 55 degrees. So therefore Simon is incorrect. Moving on to question 21, let's just zoom in so we've got see it a little bit clearer on the screen, and of course it's going to reset. So let's just go back to the question, and it says that Morgana decides to put £500 in an account that pays compound interest. She wants to have at least £560 in the account after 3 years. Work out to one decimal place the minimum annual interest rate that she needs. So let's first of all set out the compound formula. So we've got £500 initial amount. We don't know what the decimal multiplier is going to be, so we're just going to call that X. We know the time period is 3, and we want an answer where it's going to be bigger than 560. So what we then need to do is rearrange this to make X a subject. So if I take the 500 over to the other side by dividing, I end up with X cubed equals 560 over 500, and then making X a subject, I cube root that answer, in which I get an X value of 1.03849 blah blah blah. Now we're wanting more than that, so here we've got X has got to be greater. So if I just change that equal sign for a greater sign, so to one decimal place we need to round up, so round up to one decimal place, giving me an answer of 1.039, and converting that into a percentage is going to be 3.9%. And again, if you wanted to, you could check. So for example, if I did 500 multiplied by 1.038 to the power of 3, that would give me an answer of 559.19. Oh, what's happened there? And if I did 500 multiplied by 1.039 to the power of 3, that gives me 560.81 pence. And as you can see, that there gives me an answer that's bigger than 560. So therefore, the correct percentage that I'm going to need for the account is going to be 3.9. Moving on to question 22, it says an approximate value for a root of an equation x can be found using the iterative formula, and we've got iterative formula. Starting value of x is for x1 is 4. Work out the values of x2 and x3. So for this, if I write down x2 and x3, now the question doesn't say anything about decimal placing, so it's really important that I would just copy what's on your calculator. So if I get the calculator back up, just move it there. So with this, you need to enter the first value first. So I've got 4, press equals. So that's stored as the answer. So now what I need to do is enter this the iterative formula using ands wherever I see an x. So I've got cube root of 5 bracket ands close bracket squared minus 2 bracket ands bracket minus 3. And just be careful, make sure you double check that to make sure it's like absolutely spot on. Press equals. So my first answer is going to be 4.101, and let me just write down the other digits, 56593, so 56593. And then for x3, keeping it on the calculator, pressing equals again, so I get 4.177, I think it was 6 was the next digit, 641641648, I think it was. Yeah. And again, if you want to round off your answers, then that's absolutely fine, obviously making sure that you are putting it in the right spot. Then it then says, by continuing the iteration, show that the value of x is more than 4.25. So getting the calculator back for one more, I think this is a bit of a duff question, because typically I would always teach students just to find the solution, just keep pressing equals until your calculator stops giving you a fresh answer. And as you can see, that the value of x to infinity gives me an answer of 4.388. So we just write that down. So 4.388489747, which is greater than 4.25. So that's how I'd represent the answer for that. Moving on to question 23, it says here are 3 sets of cards. We've got set A, and we've got set B, and we've got set C. It then says in the game, a player has 2 options. Option 1, pick 2 cards from set A. Option 2, pick 1 card from set B and pick 1 card from set C. The cards are picked at random. The player wins if the total of their 2 cards is exactly 10. And we then need to, what's the question asking, which is on the other page. I'm guessing it's which option gives a better chance of winning. Show you're working to support your answer. Now for this, I'm just going to zoom out so we can see all of this on the screen, and I think we can just about see that. So for this, what I'm going to do is first of all work out the probability of winning with option A. So with option A, we're picking 2 cards from set A. So the opportunity of getting a 10, the only combination I can get a 10 is if I get, so the probability of a win is going to be getting a 5 and a 5. And that's the only way I can win. So the probability of selecting a 5 is going to be 3 out of 8. And then I pick that card, so the probability of the next card being a 5, well, I've only got 2 left and I've only got 7 cards remaining. So that's going to give me an answer of 3 over, and that's going to give me an answer of, 6, that should be. Over 56, and I can simplify that as 3 over 28. So that there is my probability of winning with option A. So then if I move on to working out with option B. Now option B, I'm picking one card from B and one card from C. So I'm looking for a combination where it adds up to 10. So I can either get 4 from set B and a 6 from set C, or I can get a 6 from set B and a 4 from set C. So looking at this, if I look at this one first, so 4 first will be 1 out of 7 multiplied by 1 out of 4, which comes up to an answer as 1 over 28. Then, if I use a different colour, let's go for blue. So for this one here, a 6, well there's only one 6, so that's going to be 1 over 7 multiplied by 1 over 4, and that again comes up to 1 over 28. Now or in probability means plus, so that then is going to be 2 over 28 or 1 over 14. So all I'm then doing is comparing the two probabilities together. So as you can see, using the ones with a common denominator, so I'm using 3 over 28 for option A and 2 over 28 for option B. Which one is better? Option A, as 3 over 28 is greater than 2 over 28, and that's what I'd write as my final conclusion. Moving on to question 24, it says A is 65 to the nearest integer, B is 30 to one significant figure. Work out the upper bound for 2a squared minus 3b minus b squared. So for this to be the upper bound, what I need is I'm going to need A to be big and I want B to be small. Now with these types of questions, you always want to make sure that you are writing the upper and lower bounds for each. So for A, to what nearest integer, which is nearest 1, that's going to be 64.5 to 65.5, and to one significant figure, that's going to be to nearest 10, that is going to be 25 to 35. So using this information here to get the biggest value of 2a squared minus b squared, I need to use the biggest value of A, which is 65.5, and I want to use the smallest value for, and that should be squared, and I want to use the smallest value of B, and that's going to be 25 squared. So if I type that all into my calculator, I get an answer of 7,955.5. So then moving on to question 25, it says show that x minus 5 over x minus 2 plus x plus 5 over x plus 2 simplifies to be something x squared minus b over x squared minus 4, where a and b are integers. So for this, what we need to do is to combine the two fractions using the method of algebraic fractions. So what we need to do is find our common denominator. Now with this, our common denominator is going to be x minus 2, x plus 2. So if I just write that here, I've got x minus 2, x plus 2. So the top one for the first fraction is going to be x minus 5, x plus 2. And then for the second fraction, I'm multiplying by the second denominator. So that's going to be x minus 2, x plus 2, x plus 5, and x minus 2. And then it's just a case of joining the denominators together and combining the numerators together. So that's going to be x minus 5, x plus 2, plus x plus 5, x minus 2, and x minus 2, x plus 2. Then simplifying this, so if I do this bit first, that's going to give me x squared minus 3x, and then that's going to give me minus 10 plus, and then if I do this in a different colour, let's use a colour we're not used, blue, so that's going to be x squared plus 3x minus 10, and that's all over expansion of the bottom, which is dots, so it's going to be x squared minus 4. Then all that's left for me to then do is to collect the like terms together. So I've got 2x squared, I've got minus 3 plus 3, so that just cancels out, and I've got minus 20 over x squared minus 4, which is exactly how they wanted me to show the answer. Then moving on to our last question, it says here is a sketch of y equals x squared. The minimum point of y equals x squared is at 0, 0. Write down the coordinates of the minimum point of x squared plus 2. So this here is a translation going up 2 places only. So therefore the graph is going to be going up 2, so then I'm moving the y ordinate by plus 2, so that's going to give me a new minimum point of 0, 2. For B, it says the graph of y equals x squared is reflected on the x-axis. Write down the equation of the graph after this translation, and that is going to give me y equals minus x squared. And then for 26C, it says y equals x squared is now transformed to give x plus 3 squared. Describe fully the single transformation, and that's going to be a translation going the opposite direction, so that's going to be minus 3, 0. And there we go.